Hello students, today we're going to start chapter 9 and section 9.1 is add and subtract polynomials. Polynomials, well let's start with the monomial, that's this word right here, M-O-N-O-M-I-A-L, pronounced monomial, mono meaning one. Let's look at the definition of a monomial. A monomial is a number, a variable, or the product of a number and one or more variables with positive whole number exponents. That's a lot of information. So let's look at some examples and some non-examples. But yes, you do need to know what this definition is. An example would be a number 4 or a variable x or the product of a number and one or more variables. We could do 4x squared because it has a positive whole number exponent. We could also do 8xy to the third or 1/16 xy because we have a number and the product of a number and one or more variables with positive whole number exponents. Now let's look at some things that are not examples of monomials. 2y to the negative second. That's not because the negative 2 is not positive. It also can't be 3 over y because that's not a product of a number and a variable. That's the product of a number and a variable under 1. So it really doesn't work. The variables have to be in the numerator. We can't have them in the denominator. And some other examples, perhaps, or non-examples of monomials would be something like x plus 2. That is not a monomial because that's not a product of the number and the variable. So just remember, it can be a number, a variable, or the product of numbers and variables in any order with positive whole number exponents. Now that you learned what a monomial is, we also need to know that every monomial has a degree. And the degree of a monomial is the sum of the exponents of the variables, not the digits or the numbers, just the variables in the monomial. So I have some monomials right here. 10 is a monomial because it's a number, and it does not have any variables, so the degree is 0. Now let's look at 3x. What is the exponent of the x? It's 1, so the degree would be 1. And here we have 1/2 xy squared, and the exponent for x is 1, the exponent for y is 2, so we add those together because it's the sum, and so the degree would be 3. And in this last case, negative 1.8 m to the 5th power, m has an exponent of 5, so the degree for this would be 5. It's important that you are able to find the degree of a monomial because you're going to need that in a few minutes when we find the degree of a polynomial. So first, just remember, I'm only looking at the exponents of the variables, and I add those together, and that gives me my degree. I just mentioned to you a word a while ago, polynomial. Polynomial is a monomial or the sum of monomials. So if I have two monomials and add or subtract them, then that would be considered a polynomial. And each one of those monomials in that polynomial is called a term of the polynomial. So let's look at some examples of polynomials. I'm going to do some examples and some non-examples. So one example might be 3x squared. That is a monomial, so it could also be considered a polynomial. One that is not would be 3x to the negative 2. Because I have a negative exponent, it is not a monomial, so it can't be a polynomial. I could also have something like 4y squared minus 3x. 4y squared is a monomial, 3x is a monomial. It's the sum of those. You actually say it's a difference. Well, yes, but a difference is the same thing of a sum, because I could just say that's plus negative 3x. So that would be considered a binomial because it has two terms. Two terms, binomial. Over here, if I had 4 over n plus 3x, again, that is not a polynomial because you have n in the denominator. And let's look at one more. How about 4x squared minus 3y plus 7xyz? This is a polynomial because I have 4x squared, which is a monomial, 3y is a monomial, and 7xyz is also a monomial, and I'm adding them all together. I know that's subtraction, but it's the opposite of addition, adding a negative. So that would be considered a sum, and that would be considered a trinomial because there are three terms, and tri means three. So we have monomial, binomial, trinomial, but they all fit in the category of polynomials. The next part of this process is figuring what the degree of a polynomial is. You remember the degree of a monomial is the sum of the exponents in the monomial. Well, the degree of the polynomial is the greatest degree of any of the monomials. So let's look here. We have 3x squared. Well, I just have one monomial, and the degree is 2, so the degree of the whole polynomial would be 2. And here I have 4y squared minus 3x. Well, the degree of the first monomial is 2, and the degree of the second number, the second term is 1. So I look at which one of those bigger, it's 2, so the degree of that polynomial is 2. And I'm going to do the same thing here for this trinomial. The degree of the first term is 2. The degree of the second term is 1. The degree of the third term is 3, because I have an exponent of 1, an exponent of 1, and an exponent of 1. You add them together, you get 3. So the degree of the polynomial is the largest one of those, which is 3. Again, to find the degree of a polynomial, find the degree of each term, and then choose the largest number. One more important part of this whole process is standard algebra writing procedure. Whenever we have a polynomial, we write it so that the polynomial is in order from greatest to least of the exponent of any variable. So I choose a variable. Typically, there's a variable in most of the terms. So I pick which variable I'm going to use, and then I put first the term that has the largest variable of that exponent. So if I have b squared minus 4b to the fourth plus 3b cubed, I'm going to use b as my variable. So I start with the largest exponent first, and that's negative 4b to the fourth. And next would be plus 3b cubed. And then next would be plus b squared. So here with the second one, 4x minus 2x squared plus 3, notice that 3 doesn't have a variable, so it's going to go at the very end. And we're going to start with negative 2x squared. So that would be negative 2x squared plus 4x plus 3. So I went in order with my variable, x squared, x, no x. B to the fourth, b to the third, b squared. So everything that we've done up to now is preparing you for adding and subtracting polynomials. You have to make sure that the variable is the same, they're in the correct order, you know the degree, you know what a polynomial is, and you know what a monomial is. That's preparing us for adding to polynomials. Well, here, it's very important that when you add and subtract like terms, that you only add and subtract exactly the same variables, and then you would just add or subtract the coefficients. So let's say right here, I have negative 2x squared. Do I have any more x squareds anywhere? Yes, there's a 3x squared. So negative 2x squared plus 3x squared is x squared. And I'm going to put a line through these so that you know that we've already done those and I don't have to worry about them anymore. So then I'm going to go to 3x. I've got positive 3x plus, well, there's no other plain x, so I'm just going to write down 3x. and I'm going to cross that one off. And then I have negative x cubed plus x cubed. Well, negative x cubed plus x cubed is 0, so I don't need to write anything down, but I can go ahead and cross it off. And then all I'm left with is negative 12, so I'm adding negative 12, so I just put minus 12. And it worked out that it's written in the correct order with x squared, x, and then no x at all. So the sum equals x squared plus 3x minus 12. And here's another example we're going to look at. 4x cubed plus 2x squared minus 4 plus x cubed minus 3x squared plus x. Now, why are these things in parentheses? They're in parentheses because they're polynomials. Now, because we're adding, it really doesn't matter that the parentheses are there, but we'll just keep them for right now. So I'm going to start with 4x squared plus, 4x cubed plus x cubed would be 5x cubed. And then I have 2x squared plus negative 3x squared, which is negative 1x squared, or just negative x squared. And then I have negative 4 plus nothing, and I have an x over here that I haven't used yet. So we're going to write plus x minus 4. That way I can keep all of them in order. And I didn't cross them out this time because it's the second time around. You can cross them out if you want to, but my answer is 5x cubed minus x squared plus x minus 4. Again, I'm just adding like terms, which means they have exactly the same variable with the same exponent. Now this is where you got to pay really, really close attention because we're subtracting. And we're subtracting a whole bunch of stuff that's inside parentheses. So when I subtract a polynomial, I have to be very, very careful with what I'm subtracting. So we're going to start with 2c squared minus 3c squared. 2c squared minus 3c squared would just be negative c squared, because 2 minus 3 is negative 1, negative 1c squared. And I'm going to cross that one off this time because it's kind of important. Next I'm going to go to my c. I don't have any c's over here, but I know that I'm subtracting negative 4c. Well, when I subtract negative 4c, that means I have a plus 4c, because this negative times this negative, or this minus a negative, is the same as plus 4c. And then I have negative 8 minus 1, which equals negative 9. So my solution is negative c squared plus 4c minus 9. And I know this takes a lot of practice trying to figure all this out, and we're going to do a lot of practicing. But just make sure you pay attention to this minus sign right there, because it's subtracting a positive, then subtracting a negative, and then subtracting a positive again, and you got to make sure you understand those rules for integers when you're adding and subtracting polynomials. And the last example for today is 5y squared plus 2y minus 4 minus negative y squared plus 4y minus 3. So I'm going to start with 5y squared. 5y squared minus negative y squared would be 6y squared, because 5 minus negative 1 is positive 6. 2y minus 4y is negative 2y. And then negative 4 minus negative 3 is the same thing as negative 4 plus 3, which is negative 1. So my solution is 6y squared minus 2y minus 1. And here are your 3 practice problems for tonight. The first one, number 1, tells you to find the degree of 6x squared y to the third. Number 2 says find the degree of 2x squared y plus 3xy squared minus 5x squared y squared. And the third one is to subtract these two polynomials, 4c squared minus 2c plus 7 minus negative 2c squared plus 5c minus 3. Once you've done these practice problems, take a picture of your answer, submit it through Edmodo so that you get credit for tonight's video.